Yeah, so I think that this is going to be like one of the most toughest subjects in all possible ways because I'm not only going to cover a lot of ground, like, like in terms of concepts, but also, I'm going to kind of try to get into the heart of, uh, like living a life that is real, that I've learned through all what I've taken seriously in my life, which, whether or not it was real to anybody else, it was real to me. And if I did not take that seriously, however stupid it was, then I lose the all of my reality. And that's what I kind of learned. And although I kind of learned that if I do not let go of that, there is no life that is there ahead for me. So, in a sense, that was my truth, so it's a kind of an intimate kind of a question that rose in my life. But then there was also this kind of a extra dimension that is also very personal for me as a human being, which I think that as I learn to live a life holding on to only my truth, then I realize that I'm missing out on a whole different realm of existence. And, like what I learned from the past couple of weeks was that is like, that that is really what living a human life is all about. And if we as like human beings lose that dimension, then we are no different from sticks and stones, I'm afraid. Like we can be super intelligent, we can be super conscious, we can be like super whatever, spiritual and whatever, but it's not going to make a difference in our existence, I'm afraid. But we must, I think that, so I want to talk about it in terms of that existential dimension. So, but I also want to look at it conceptually. Like, I want to talk about concepts that are, drawn out of my readings and my interest in literature and rhetoric and philosophy. So it's going to be theory rich as well. So, yeah, so heads up. So I want to begin with, like, what happened in philosophy after Heidegger. Like when people talk about the story of philosophy after Heidegger, they always point to, like, Marxism being the dominant philosophy and then postmodernity coming in, like they always talk about like postmodernity in terms of one, like questioning of grand narratives. That's what everybody learns in textbooks. But, I want to kind of point to a very specific question that was raised by Derrida in his dialogue with Heidegger after Levinas. So, how do you still talk about Heidegger, who was obsessed with the question of being, after someone like Levinas came and, asked the question? Yeah, I guess, let's keep the question of being going and let Heideggers and geniuses keep asking those questions. But maybe there's something that comes prior to being itself, which these people are blind to. Which what Levinas says, in one of his interviews, it was, he says, how does philosophy start? He says it starts with tremors, you know, almost like he says traumas. So he brought about like, so you can feel his trauma just arising because his trauma that Heidegger cannot see, or the tradition of being, or the tradition of being hyper focused on the question of being, is blind to this whole other aspect of life, which is perhaps even prior to that. It might not have that solid structure and that glory that being has, but it has a certain richness to it, a certain, even a language that is so different. That's where Derrida even draws the richness of his word difference from. Because a tradition itself is a tradition of trembling, he says. So yeah, so he brings that dialogue of trembling and everything into the surface of the question of being. So he talks about being itself is trembling because underneath being, there is so much happening that you can see the trembling happening even in Heidegger and every tradition of philosophy, which is what is deconstruction. So if you look at deconstruction that way, it's about, like Derrida talks about these hauntings, hauntologies, because the other is always haunting the question, is always behind the question of being, that being always misses the mark, to colonize the other, to it's all these, like small nuances that, like people do not pick up when they see those questions being raised, and when they club that into postmodernity, it kind of misses the mark. But I want to pursue that question further. So it's like Derrida kind of goes deeper and deeper, so into the other, but then it's kind of very philosophical. He kind of, the texts that he analyzes are, philosophers like Kierkegaard, and because Kierkegaard is a very interesting read, especially I think in The Gift of Death, you see that he talks about the self that is even hidden to Kierkegaard, which is in secret dialogue with yourself. And you kind of have this kind of parallel found, you find in Thomas Merton, who says that God is even deeper than yourself. So in all your denials, he is affirming you. In all your self-hatred, he is loving you. But he is doing it from a place that is deeper that you cannot hear yet. Because you're too deaf. You're too blind to see. Like, so it's like he, that kind of deeper aspect of this kind of dialogue that everybody misses. It's a universal kind of a kind of blindness and deafness that we hear, which makes the other always be the other. Like, so, it's this kind of a mystery that only the heart can explore, because this is not like, it's a different tradition altogether. It's a tradition of the heart. It's a tradition of, like that dialogue of the heart, where you that you find only that exists between a heart and another heart. So you get that kind of a dialogue, and there begins rhetoric, true rhetoric. You know so when you look at ontology, when rhetorically, So it has to have a shape, it has to have a form, so it's like there is, a true love, a trueness to love, a true form of love, because it has to, you know, be and grow in its strength throughout eternity. It's not that God grows in love, it's just that we are drawn closer to Him for all eternity. And so, from our perspective, it looks like He grows, but He does not grow in love because He's cannot grow in love because it's not imaginable, right? Like so, so that vast open dialogue between one heart to another, you know, is witnessed. It does not happen in isolation. It happens when there is this other partner. My grandfather had this uh, sign. It's there in my old house now. It says, Christ is the head of the house, the unseen it says the unseen guest at every meal and a silent listener to every conversation. It's more like he says, my grandfather said, I know he's not the guest. He's the host. Everything belongs to him. He hosts our meals. And he's silent. No, he's silent. He says, speaks. But we cannot listen to him because we are too loud. But it's like, even Christ himself says, when two or three are gathered together in my name, I am in the midst of them. So it's like there should always exist this third self who's witness to this dialogue that happens. And that has to be rhetorical because it presents a witness, right? Like a witness who is always, in whose presence you are accountable to. Because like in the Bible, the first question that God asks Cain is, where is your brother Abel? Where is your brother Abel? So the question is like, in your dialogue with each other, where is your heart in your relationship with each other? Are you putting each other's heart, like, are you putting love? Is truth existing for the sake of love? You uphold truth because love has to have a direction and a form, but then it has to go somewhere. But ultimately, in the end, you know, what's it gonna be? Are you gonna stick to your truth? And that's the dialogue that has to happen. That is the dialogue of the heart. And then like it that's where thinkers like Nietzsche become important. Because Nietzsche says, what if truth were a woman? Then what happens? All these philosophers, what do they look like? They look like ridiculous buffoons with psychological issues, right? It's all like a ridiculous, tradition of whatever. And underneath that, what she, like what's going on is, look deeper. behind truth, what lies underneath that. Abandon truth for the sake of love only, not for anything else. Not for anything else. That is the message of Christ. You know, for the sake of love alone, not for anything else, not for the sake of profit, not for any other end, not for any other end. That is the dialogue of the heart, because there has to be truth. You have to keep the truth in your heart, but you have to sacrifice it only for the sake of love, so that love alone has the last word in every interaction in your life. Because the question that God asks you, your heart and your soul, at every moment of your life, is the question is not just where is your brother, is how much could you love your brother? Only so much. God is not going to judge you, but then you're going to look at yourself and you're like, the only regret, the only regret you will have in heaven, you know, all the saints will tell you right now. It's not that you're going to heaven or not. I can tell you that right now, everybody's going to heaven. You don't even have to be Christian. You don't even have to be religious. You don't have to follow anything. I believe that 100%, and I don't care what people tell me. I don't care. So, like, I don't care what your sin is. It's like you're going to heaven. That's punishment, and savagery is not the way of God. God is going to make a way. It's like there is going to be a purgatorial way, a way of cleansing. It's not sadistic torture. It's a way where you come to terms with yourself. It's a way of learning. Like Origin of Alexandria knew that. It's a way of learning. It's not a way of torture. So it's very different with God's wisdom and God's love and God's mercy. So it's different. So I'm not getting into that debate, but the only regret that every soul will have is, oh my God, when they see God, they will be like, why did I not love enough in this world? I should have loved more. I should have always let love have the last word in every aspect of my life. And that is ontological. That is the very basis of existence. Of if not, nothing is real. Like nothing can be real. Like there is no meaning in existence if that is not real. Yeah, we will fuck up a million zillion times. It's fine. As long as we kind of put ourselves out of the way eventually and see us for who we are, and then see from love's perspective the hurt and pain of the other and sacrifice the truth for the sake of love, only then can we grow in the right direction. And only that is reality. That is the only reality that we have going forward as, a culture, as human beings in this world. That's what I really do believe. Because we cannot judge any human being eventually. We cannot judge. Who judges? How can anybody judge anybody? Like even Jesus says, I do not condemn you. He is the judge. On the day of judgment, he will tell every soul, I do not condemn you. It's already there in the scriptures, the verdict of the judgment, day of judgment. If you read it deeply enough, you'll see it. So it's not that. So I hope I hope people get it, because if we do not go deep in this direction, then I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be an epidemic of sorts that's going to just ravage our societies. No matter how rich we get, how technologically advanced we get, it's not going to stop this plague of the soul that's taking over our countries, our societies, our cultures. It's like in the state of massive entropy, if you ask me. So I hope that all of us find peace in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.